Nova Prime was humanity's crowning jewel beyond the Sol system. A thriving colony of 10 million. It was a beacon of progress, a testament to what humans could build when given the freedom of the stars. Vast, towering cities stretched towards the heavens, connected by sky bridges and illuminated by the warm glow of orbital refineries. The colony's terraforming had been perfected. Rivers shimmered under twin moons, and golden fields swayed beneath artificial weather patterns designed to mimic Earth's most temperate days. It was paradise, a place where science and civilization flourished without war. Governor Elias Voss stood at the heart of the command center, gazing at the planetary defense grid readouts. A career diplomat, he had spent years ensuring Nova Prime remained neutral amid the galaxy's many tensions. Yet, as the alarms shrieked through the halls, he knew diplomacy had come to an end. "Confirm," he ordered, his voice unervingly calm. A young lieutenant, pale-faced and trembling, swallowed hard before responding. Massive unidentified fleet inbound. Over 700 warships. No hails. No responses to challenge signals. Voss turned to Commander Anya Loren, the colony's military head. Unlike the civilians in the room, she exuded controlled aggression. Her uniform was crisp, her posture rigid, but her eyes, hardened by years of off-world skirmishes, were unreadable. "The Zalzir," she said, almost a whisper. The name fell like a blade. Humanity's encounters with the Zalzir had been sparse, mostly limited to disputed borders and tense standoffs. But there had been whispers, reports of other colonies, non-human, that had simply vanished. No survivors. No wreckage. Just silence. Voss exhaled slowly, turning back to the readouts. The fleet was close now, just beyond the system's outer asteroid belt. Moving with precision, purpose. The colony's defense platforms powered up, railguns humming, missile silos unlocking. The Terra Navy wouldn't arrive in time. They were alone. A cold, mechanical voice interrupted the rising tension. "Incoming transmission. Unknown source. Audio only. Put it through," Voss ordered. The voice that followed was deep guttural, layered with an alien resonance that vibrated through the very structure of the command center. "Your world is claimed. You are vermin on sacred ground. Your extinction is necessary." Silence. Then the first orbital bombardment struck. Nova Prime's sky ignited in a cascade of crimson fire. The outermost defense satellites detonated instantly, reduced to nothing but debris and ionized gas. The city's towering structures shuddered as atmospheric shields struggled to hold against the incoming storm. Streets filled with panicked civilians. Air raid sirens howled through the metropolis. Shields holding at 60%, a technician shouted over the chaos. "Return fire." Loren barked. The colony's orbital platforms answered, unleashing kinetic slugs the size of skyscrapers. Automated missile systems blanketed the sky, swarming toward the incoming warships. Explosions rippled through the void. Enemy vessels shattered, but there were too many. Far too many. Then they breached orbit. Zalzir troop carriers descended in waves, their hulls black against the burning sky. Their landing was not careful or methodical. It was brutal, an invasion force with no regard for collateral damage. Structures collapsed beneath the impact, entire districts swallowed in firestorms. Loren's hands clenched into fists. "Deploy all ground forces. We hold the capital. We hold until..." The blast cut her off. A direct hit to the command center's outer structure sent the entire room into chaos. Consoles sparked, emergency lights flickered. Voss hit the ground hard, pain flaring through his ribs. Through the shattered glass of the observation deck, he could see the first waves of Zalzir warriors flooding the streets. They were monstrous things, tall, multi-limbed, armored in bioorganic plating that shimmered under the burning sky. They moved in perfect synchronization, slaughtering civilians with cold efficiency. Plasma bolts carved through flesh and steel alike. The city's security forces fought back, but it was clear within minutes they were outmatched. Voss pushed himself upright, his breath ragged. "Evacuate who you can," he ordered, though he knew the futility of it. Loren wasn't listening. She had drawn her sidearm, issuing rapid commands to what remained of her forces. Fall back positions at the inner city walls. Hold the landing zones until... The ceiling groaned. A second impact. This one much closer. The reinforced walls buckled. A rupture in the structure sent flames roaring through the main hallways. The command center was compromised. A soldier, blood streaming down his temple, staggered toward them. "Commander, they've taken the primary defense grid. We can't hold." Lauren shot him a look that made him hesitate, then deflate. "Then we take as many of them with us as we can," she said grimly. Voss knew then that this was not a battle. It was a massacre. The colony was lost. Another explosion. Closer this time. The ground cracked. The city, their beautiful city, was dying. A desperate thought flickered through Voss's mind. "Someone has to know what happened here." "The distress signal," he gasped, turning to the technician, still struggling to operate a half-broken console. "Get it out." "They're jamming us," the technician choked, hands shaking over the interface. "I can't get a full signal through." "Then send fragments," Voss insisted. "A warning. A name. Something." The technician gave a frantic nod, fingers flying over the keys. In the distance, a deep, reverberating sound filled the air, a Zalzir war horn. It meant one thing: final extermination. Lauren pulled Voss to his feet. "We have to move." Voss barely registered the words. His gaze was fixed on the monitor, where the transmission bar flickered weakly. A single line of code made it through before the screen cracked under the pressure wave of another explosion. Nova Prime lost. War. 700,000 ships. ***. Lauren dragged him toward the emergency corridor as the command center collapsed behind them. The heat of the explosion seared his back. His ears rang with the last screams of the fallen. The colony was dying, but the message was out, and humanity would hear it. The transmission arrived in fragments, corrupted data packets, bursts of static interwoven with brief, horrifying glimpses of Nova Prime's final moments. The war room deep beneath Luna Prime fell into silence as the footage played, distorted but unmistakable. The colony skyline, once a beacon of human ingenuity, crumbled beneath an unrelenting bombardment. The defensive batteries fired in vain, their railgun volleys swallowed by the sheer enormity of the invading fleet. Then came the final message, brief but damning. Nova Prime lost. War. 700,000 ships. ***. Admiral Darius Kane exhaled slowly, his jaw tight. The words hung in the air like a funeral bell, final and absolute. He had spent decades preparing for war, but nothing could have prepared him for this. Across the room, President Lorna Halstead sat motionless, the deep lines on her face drawn in tight, deliberate control. "How many survivors?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. A hollow pause. "None," came the reply from a grim-faced intelligence officer. The colony was wiped out to the last man, woman, and child. No one spoke. Around the war table, Earth's highest-ranking military officials and government leaders remained frozen, struggling to process what this meant. Not just the loss of Nova Prime, but the implications behind it. The Zalzir had not raided, conquered, or enslaved. They had eradicated. The colony's destruction had not been a mistake. It had been a message. Kane's voice broke the silence. "We need immediate confirmation of Zalzir fleet positions. Their forces have already withdrawn beyond sensor range," a tactical officer responded. "They didn't stay to occupy, just to kill." "Cowards," muttered General Saito from the far end of the table, his hands clenched into fists, knuckles pale. No attempt at diplomacy. No warning. They wanted this war. Halstead straightened, folding her hands before her. "And they will have it." The words sent a ripple through the room, the weight of them undeniable. Humanity had fought wars before against rogue fleets, against pirates and insurrectionists. But never like this. Never against an enemy who sought nothing less than their extinction. Kane leaned forward, his voice measured. "We have a preemptive strike doctrine in place. If we mobilize, now we can push into Zalzir space before they reinforce their borders." One of the counselors hesitated. This could be a trap. Kane's eyes darkened. It's not a trap. It's genocide. And if we hesitate, they will do it again. Somewhere else. Another colony. Another 10 million lives. We act now, or we spend the rest of history regretting it. Halstead's gaze flickered over the table, assessing each face. There was no debate left to be had. The footage of Nova Prime burned behind her eyelids, the screams still echoing in the transmission's corrupted audio. We mobilize everything, she said. Every ship, every soldier. We will not wait for them to come to us. We take the war to them. The order was given. Fleet Command activated full wartime protocols within the hour. Across the Sol system, shipyards that had spent decades producing vessels at peacetime efficiency now roared to life, their production quotas discarded in favor of sheer, unrelenting output. The largest mobilization in human history began. The Terran Grand Armada had been theoretical until now, its numbers calculated only on emergency projection charts. 700,000 warships. It was a number meant to deter, not to be used. But now they would launch. Kane watched the holoscreen as the fleet manifest grew by the second. Dreadnoughts that had never seen combat were readied for war, their crews undergoing last-minute drills. Carrier groups prepped their fighter squadrons, finalizing loadouts that would soon be tested in the vacuum of deep space. Battlecruisers, heavy destroyers, missile frigates, each was being fitted for maximum lethality. Every weapon system primed for the vengeance humanity would deliver. In the officers' barracks, soldiers received their deployment orders. Some were veterans, men and women who had fought before, but many were fresh recruits, barely out of training. They had signed up to defend the colonies. Now, they would avenge them. Earth's skies filled with departing ships, their thrusters illuminating the dark as they formed into battle formations. Space stations once dedicated to commerce were converted overnight into war hubs, distributing supplies, fueling war machines that would never return the same. Kane stood aboard the bridge of the Indomitable, the Terran flagship, watching as the fleet assembled. The sheer scale of it was staggering. 700,000 warships. An armada stretching across the void in every direction, bound by a single purpose. Halstead's final orders had been simple. Burn their worlds. Leave nothing standing. Kane turned his gaze toward the distant stars. The Zalzir had made their move. Now, humanity would make theirs, and they would make the galaxy tremble. The fleet moved like an oncoming storm. 700,000 warships carving through the void in perfect formation. The stars themselves seemed to shrink before their advance, their brilliance swallowed by the sheer mass of humanity's wrath. Across the command decks of dreadnoughts and battlecruisers, officers checked and rechecked weapon systems, calculated firing solutions, and monitored the steady hum of reactors that powered the engines of war. There was no turning back now. The moment the first ship crossed into Zalzir space, the war would become something irreversible. Admiral Darius Kane stood at the forefront, his hands clasped behind his back as he surveyed the endless expanse of ships from the bridge of the Indomitable. The flagship's reinforced viewports stretched before him, framing the fleet's spearhead as it pressed into enemy territory. Tactical readouts hovered in the air, data streams flowing in real time from reconnaissance drones that had gone ahead. The Zalzir were waiting. Kane narrowed his gaze at the displays. The enemy's fleet was massive, clusters of bioorganic warships, their hulls shifting in eerie, almost liquid patterns. They moved in formation, their ranks undisturbed by fear or hesitation. There were no transmissions, no last-minute negotiations, no attempt at deception. Just the cold, silent understanding that only one side would leave this system alive. Commander Anya Loren's voice cut through the quiet. Their defensive line is holding tight around their primary colony world, but we're detecting movement on the outskirts. They're repositioning for an encirclement strategy. Kane nodded. They know we outnumber them. They'll try to stretch us thin, force us into overextending. The fleet's too large to be baited like that, Loren replied. Kane exhaled. Let's make sure of it. The order was given. The first wave of Terran warships surged forward, missile frigates and long-range artillery ships unleashing a barrage that lit up the void in streaks of fire and metal. Kinetic slugs, each the size of a small building, tore through the enemy's outer defenses, shattering smaller vessels on impact. Zal'Zir return fire was immediate. Ribbons of plasma lanced across the battlefield, consuming ships in bright, silent explosions. Then, the dreadnoughts arrived. Humanity's heaviest warships, their hulls layered in reinforced armor, plunged into the heart of the Zal'Zir formation like battering rams. Railguns fired at close range, carving through enemy vessels like paper, while point defense systems swatted down incoming fire with machine-like precision. The Zal'Zir fought with terrifying efficiency. Their ships moved in perfect synchrony, their organic weaponry shifting and adapting in real time. Entire wings of Terran fighters were swallowed by monstrous energy fields that ripped them apart mid-flight. Massive Zal'Zir capital ships deployed boarding pods, launching hordes of insectoid warriors directly onto human vessels, forcing brutal close-quarters combat in the halls of the very ships meant to destroy them. The Indomitable shook under impact as enemy plasma fire glanced off its shields. Kane barely flinched, his focus locked on the battle. Status. Frontline holding, Lauren said, scanning the tactical readout. We're breaking through their outer defenses, but they're reinforcing their core fleet. They know we're coming for their homeworld. Kane turned his attention to the planet below, a massive world covered in dark, chitinous structures. This was the heart of the Zal'Zir Empire, the place where their war machines were grown, where their soldiers were hatched. It was the source of everything that had led to Nova Prime's destruction. There would be no peace, no negotiation, no retreat. Send in the planetary bombardment teams, Kane ordered. The order spread across the fleet in seconds. Entire squadrons of heavy cruisers broke formation, descending toward the planet's upper atmosphere. Missile bays opened, delivering payloads meant to erase entire cities. The first detonations rippled across the surface, massive unnatural explosions that sent waves of destruction tearing through the Zal'Zir hive complexes. The enemy reacted with a frenzy. From a planet's surface, massive tendrils of energy shot into space, striking down incoming ships with terrifying accuracy. The Zal'Zir weren't just defending, they were retaliating with everything they had. Kane watched as several Terran cruisers were torn apart mid-flight, their wreckage swallowed by the planet's violent counterattack. This isn't desperation, Lauren muttered. They were ready for this. Kane clenched his jaw. Of course they were. The Zal'Zir weren't mindless beasts. They had planned for this war just as humanity had. But that didn't matter, because humanity would not stop. Through the chaos of the battle, one thing became clear: the war would not end here. It would not be decided in a single engagement, no matter how devastating. This was only the beginning. The war had become a living thing, an unrelenting force that consumed the void between the stars. The battlefield stretched across an entire system, debris from shattered warships drifting like ghosts of the fallen. The fleet pressed forward, relentless, methodical, but the Zal'Zir fought like creatures born for nothing else. For every alien ship destroyed, more emerged from the dark, their movements precise, their resistance unwavering. Humanity's wrath had met an enemy that did not fear annihilation. Admiral Darius, Kane stood at the center of the Indomitable's command deck, eyes fixed on the holo-display as real-time battle data streamed across its surface. The Zal'Zir homeworld loomed below, its surface burning where the bombardment had struck. Swarms of enemy ships continued to rise from the planet like insects from a disturbed hive, throwing themselves against the Terran fleet without hesitation. It was a war of attrition, one neither side could afford to lose. Commander Anya Lauren's voice was sharp. We've lost the Vanguard and Peregrine, both dreadnoughts destroyed. The Zal'Zir are adapting their attack patterns. Kane absorbed the information, expression unreadable. They had planned for losses. They had known this would be brutal, but the sheer resilience of the enemy was staggering. He had seen determined foes before, but nothing like this. The Zal'Zir didn't retreat, didn't hesitate. They fought with a single chilling certainty, that they could not be allowed to fail. Another alert flashed across the display. Zalzir planetary defenses were shifting, massive biocannons adjusting their angles, preparing for something bigger than counterattacks. Kane's fingers tightened around the edge of the command console. The realization hit him a second before Lauren voiced it. "They're targeting our Dreadnought division," she said, voice low, urgent. "They're trying to cripple our heavy firepower in one move." Kane turned toward the comms officer. "Emergency fleet redistribution. Move the Titan's Wrath and Resolute into forward positions. Reinforce them with all available cruisers." The orders were executed within seconds. The formation adjusted, but not fast enough. The Zalzir fired. From the depths of their ravaged world, massive beams of energy tore through the void, lancing directly into the heart of the human formation. Entire capital ships were incinerated in an instant, their hulls rupturing, crew and metal alike vanishing into fire and silence. A section of the Terran fleet collapsed, hundreds of ships lost in the span of moments. Lauren swore under her breath. "They knew we'd come in force. They built those weapons for us." Kane's expression darkened. The Zalzir had not been reckless in provoking humanity. They had expected retaliation. They had planned for it. And yet they had still destroyed Nova Prime, knowing it would bring the full fury of Earth upon them. Because they had never intended to win a conventional war. "They're stalling," Kane muttered, the weight of realization settling in his chest. "They're not fighting to hold this world. They're delaying us." Lauren turned sharply toward him, comprehension dawning in her eyes. Kane activated the fleet-wide communications channel, his voice cold and absolute. "All units, full-scale assault. No more defensive positioning. We break their lines now." The final push began. The remaining Terran dreadnoughts surged forward, railguns firing in relentless salvos. Battleships carved through Zalzir formations with disciplined precision, while fighter squadrons wove between enemy ships, delivering pinpoint strikes to critical systems. The Zalzir countered with equal fury, their ships moving like an extension of a single mind, every loss instantly compensated for. On the planet's surface, humanity's bombardment escalated. Missile carriers unleashed payloads that cracked the crust of the world, exposing the biostructures beneath. Fires raged across entire continents, as the last of the planetary defenses were torn apart. And then, at last, the Zalzir lines wavered. It happened almost imperceptibly, a single misalignment, a delay in response. A moment where the perfect coordination of their fleet fractured ever so slightly. Kane saw it. Now, he ordered. Terran warships surged into the gap. The fleet split into strike teams, carving through enemy formations with ruthless efficiency. The Zalzir, so precise, so synchronized, finally began to falter. On the planet below, the bombardment reached its peak. The largest Zalzir structures, hive clusters, birthing chambers, command nexuses, were reduced to ash. The screams of the dying Zalzir, transmitted through whatever strange organic technology they possessed, reverberated through every intercepted frequency. The sound was not fear. It was something worse. Acceptance. And then, without warning, the Zalzir fleet disengaged. It wasn't a retreat. There was no panic, no disorder. The surviving ships simply broke away from combat, their movements eerily calm. Some stayed behind, fighting to the last, but the bulk of their forces drifted back, away from their burning world, away from the Terran onslaught. Kane's gut twisted. This wasn't defeat. This was something else. "They're abandoning the planet," Lauren said, voice quiet with disbelief. The realization struck like a hammer blow. "They wanted us to destroy it," Kane murmured. "This wasn't their homeworld. It was a sacrifice." The bridge fell into stunned silence. The battle was won. The Zalzir world was in ruins, its fleet shattered, its defenses obliterated. Humanity had avenged Nova Prime. And yet, the victory felt hollow. The Zalzir hadn't fought like a people protecting their last bastion. They had fought like a people with something greater waiting beyond the destruction. A chill settled in Kane's chest. "This war isn't over," he said. Lauren met his gaze, eyes filled with the same understanding. "No," she agreed, "it's just beginning." The last Zalzir ships disappeared into the void, vanishing into the unknown. Whatever came next, humanity would not be caught unaware again. The fleet remained, victorious but wary, watching the empty darkness where their enemy had gone.